Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jasmine. I'm a workshop assistant with the Center for Creativity. I want to thank you all for coming to this mini shop, just talking about poetry and identity. So we're just going to get started here. So again, my name is Jasmine Green. So if you have any questions, just in case you're wondering what my name is, that's who I am. So before we begin, this is just some useful info, just in case you're curious. So this is going to be a pretty quick workshop. It's going to be about 15 minutes long. We're going to have a 5-minute conversation period afterwards. So because I'm going a little bit quickly, I'm not going to be able to stop as frequently to give any needed nuance or instruction for certain things. So if you need me to clarify anything, you can just let me know in that 5-minute period afterwards. And also, if you'd like to share what you've been working on during this workshop, feel free to use that time as well, because I'd love to see what you guys come up with afterwards. As always, this workshop is going to be recorded to be placed on YouTube. This is for some of our, interested participants who weren't able to make it for today's meeting, or not meeting, sorry, for today's workshop. Meeting is a little bit of a stressful term right now, I'm pretty sure. But it's also if you would like to go back and review anything that we've talked about today. So that's always going to be available. And again, as always, you can use the chat to ask questions if need be. And then I will give you all some time just in case you need to collect any items, but give me a thumbs up if you have everything and are ready to go. But more specifically, what you would need for this workshop is like a notebook, a pen or a pencil. If you don't have either of those, you can also just use your laptop in like a Word file or something along those lines. And most importantly, somewhere comfy to write in. Even though this is a pretty short workshop, being somewhere comfy is also really helpful when it comes to writing. Oh, I see we had someone else join. Hi, we just got started, so you didn't miss too much. We're just going over what you would need for this workshop. And thanks for coming. So if everyone can give me a thumbs up in the chat just to let me know that they have everything and are ready to go.
I don't know how to do this.
Oh.
Hello.
I don't know how to use it.
Yeah, if you want to just verbally let me know also, that's perfectly fine.
Hello. Sorry, I haven't done this, so. Oh, I found it now.
No problem. I'm glad you're here. So.
Walk to the shop if you wanted anything.
No, I don't need them. But you know what we need. Oh, sorry, my son's talking. Sorry.
No, you're fine, Mary. Thank you. If you could just put it on mute for, or I can grab that for you. There we go. Yeah, come on mute if you need to ask me anything at any time. So yeah, just to continue. Some of the goals of this mini shop are first to use poetry as a means of pulling people into our perspectives. I'm going to go over a theme in a little bit, but it's going to be about having conversations with people that may be tough and that we've kind of been neglecting. And so this is kind of just like a way in which to rethink, not necessarily confronting people, but just having like certain conversations and letting them know where you're coming from. And poetry is a really helpful tool for that. And since this is only a 15-minute workshop, it is possible, but very unlikely that you're going to come out of this workshop with a complete poem. That is perfectly fine. What we're trying to do today is just to set up a framework that you can use, in the minutes or even hours after this workshop if you want to just continue to work on this. And then again, with this going to be, uploaded onto YouTube, you can always come back and reference it. So yeah, don't feel discouraged if you leave this workshop without having a full poem. And so again, like I mentioned before, the theme of this workshop is going to be conversations not yet said. So this is, again, using poetry as a means of fostering better communication skills between you and, say, like someone in your life, or even, oh, sorry, there's a question in chat, I think. No, Mary, don't feel bad at all. You're perfectly fine. If you have any questions, just use the chat to let me know, okay? All right. So yeah, we can get started. So first, what I want you to think about is there a conversation with someone that you've been wanting to have and, you know, for some reason you haven't been able to? Just taking your notebook, you can write at the very top, which I'm gonna write in here, because I like doing the workshops along with you guys. So the example I'm going to use, oh, this is tough. What conversation have I not yet said? Actually, don't think I've told my mother recently how much I appreciate her with, you know, with everything going on. I think that's really important. So that's going to be the topic of my poem. So you can write it big at the top here, just so that you can write in any details afterwards. But some questions you want to ask yourself about this conversation are, you know, is this someone you care about? This can, you know, it's perfectly fine if this is more of like an angry poem, or, you know, you can still be angry with people that you care about. But if this isn't someone you care about, it's still perfectly okay to use this as a poem. It doesn't even have to be a person necessarily. And then you also want to answer what's been stopping you from having this conversation. So you can take like a few moments just to jot down those thoughts. For me, yes, obviously care about my mama. And then what's been stopping me from having this conversation? I think for me, it's easy to not acknowledge whenever someone, whenever it's kind of obvious that you care for someone, it can be sometimes easy to let it fall on the back burner. So I think that's what's just been stopping me. I think for me, like a lack of awareness that like I haven't expressed this to her, and I think that's very important. Sorry, I think I keep getting notifications. I'm sorry if that's bothersome to you guys. All right. And let me know if I'm going too fast. I can always go back, but I'm just gonna go to the next slide. But do not feel nervous about telling me to go back. I can always do that. And so now we're just gonna get a little bit more in depth with the details of this conversation. So there's just a few more questions I want you to ask about how you're feeling about this conversation that you haven't had with either person, place, or thing. I want you to answer what's at the heart of this conversation. So I think it could be easy to equate what the conversation is about with what's at the heart of the conversation. But I really want you to dig deep here, like what's truly kind of at the root of what's going on. So I think in my case with me wanting to let my mother know that I appreciate her, I think what's at the heart of that is that you kind of almost expect that people know what you're thinking. I know for me that can sometimes be the case, and so I think what's at the heart of this is that I want to be more aware of letting people know that I truly care about them and that what they do for me is appreciated and is taken into consideration. So for me, I think that's at the heart of it. But if you want to, you know, take some time to think about what's truly at the heart of what you want to let that person know. And then once you've spent some time thinking about that, you also want to, it kind of follows after the what's at the heart of the conversation, but you also want to think about what do you wish you can tell them from your perspective. So for me, that is kind of intertwined with what's at the heart of it. So I do want to tell her that I do appreciate you and I do see what you do for me. And, you know, you've always been doing these things for me and it's kind of unfair that it's thankless a lot of the time. So if you just want to jot down pretty quickly what you've been thinking about there. then after that, you want to answer what's kind of the most important question is, what do you hope is going to come out of this conversation? So I know for me, the result is that I want her to know, like I want my mother to know that I appreciate her, and I want her to truly believe that, and that she knows in the future I'm going to make the effort to let her know more often. So it's kind of, you know, since you are communicating, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a problem, but in this issue, you want to communicate something to someone else. So I think it's also important to come to the conclusion of what do you want going forward with this person or place or thing. So I'm going to write that down too. And if everyone understands, either you can verbally let me know that that you're okay, or you can send me a thumbs up through chat, or you can even use the chat to type out that everything's good. Thank you, Marie. And then I'm just gonna go forward. Again, if you need me to go back, just let me know. Don't feel bad at all if you want me to go back, just to spend some time. Thanks, Mary. And so this is kind of the last bit of detail that you're gonna add, just to setting up sort of the information that you're gonna use for your poem. You wanna really get deep into the emotional aspect, because typically that's how we relate to one another, is using our emotions. Because we're pretty empathetic and we want to kind of, you know, obviously we want each other to be happy, but we also want to truly understand what, you know, each other is feeling. And so I think it'd be a good idea if you want to, you don't have to, obviously. But if you want to add in some, kind of just some words that come, you know, off the top of your head, just what makes you, what are kind of your initial feelings when it comes to this conversation. So is it things like fear and anxiety? Is this like a conversation that you've been fearing to have for a while? Is it relief or joy? You know, is this something that's like, oh my gosh, I can finally get this off my chest. It's no longer just, you know, rattling around in my brain, like they can finally hear what I'm saying. Or is it like, you know, something like anger or irritation? Like, you know, has this been something that's been bothering you for a while, and, you know, you are finally allowing yourself to feel anger and, you know, to finally let it out. It could be many other emotions, like, you know, like maybe sadness, remorse. Maybe you don't know necessarily how to feel, and that's something you can also write down. You're kind of like unsure of where you're at emotionally at the moment. I think for me, this is kind of a combination of remorse and joy. Like, I'm a bit remorseful because I wish I would say this more often. Like, I would think that I would tell my mother that I appreciate her more. But it's also joy because, you know, I have a relationship with her where I can tell her that, and that she would hear it, and, you know, she would also probably be really thankful that, you know, she's finally being told by, you know, one of her children that she's appreciated for what she does. So so while you're still working on that, it looks like we're actually coming down in the last few minutes. This is fine. And so from here, you want to start structuring your thoughts. So if you are familiar with writing poetry, it's perfectly okay if you're not. You may be familiar with a word called stanzas. Stanzas kind of operate almost like paragraphs do in an essay. It's just ways to group certain thoughts together in a way that helps to tell a story a little bit better. You don't necessarily have to use stanzas to organize what you're thinking. But you kind of want to take all of the things that you wrote down. So this is my list of things that I would like to include in my poem. And you want to sort of try to organize those into groups that make the most sense. And these will eventually become your stanzas for your poem. So this is kind of the way that you can tell your story from your perspective. So say, for me, I'm going to start with, first I'm going to start with an apology that I am really sorry that I haven't said this before, kind of going into those feelings of remorse, wishing I would have said these things sooner. So I'm going to make that like group 1. Feelings of remorse. After that, in group 2, you can use the word group or stanza, either is fine. I think there is where I'm going to acknowledge the things that she's done. And that I love, care about her. And then group 3, I'll probably use as like the resolution. So I'm just going to go with 3 stanzas for my poem, but you can make these as long or as short as you like. Oh, yes. I don't want to mispronounce your name on here. I think it's Shatha. Let me know if that's correct. If not, I can, do the correct pronunciation. But yeah, that is incredibly difficult. So especially with something like this, whenever if it's especially a conversation that you have been struggling to have for a while, it can be really difficult just to even figure out how to organize what you're feeling. Yeah, so I think you don't necessarily have to work on organizing it if what feels right to you is kind of just writing out how you feel and then going back over it. Something that I actually typically, as a poet, don't use journals to write poems, because what I like to do is just let my thoughts spill out and write as many words or phrases or things that comes to mind, and then afterwards I try to rearrange them and say them out loud to see if it makes sense that way. If it doesn't, try to figure out how to rephrase it or switch things around. For me, it takes a very long time before my poems start to make sense, so don't feel, bad or like you're not a good poet if it doesn't come quickly. Oftentimes it doesn't, and that's perfectly fine. But the main goal is just to get whatever you're feeling out. So however it comes out is, perfectly acceptable and will probably still be a beautiful poem. So I think, just keep working on it. I think it'll be fine. And always, we're here at the Center for Creativity. So I don't know if we have one scheduled, but we have these programs called Critiques, where basically you come to us, and if you want some help with putting, yeah, Mary, I'll answer you in just a second. Yeah, Shatha, we have these things called Critiques with the Center for Creativity. So if you like to, if you have some poems that you've been trying to work on, but you're not exactly sure how, you want to organize them, or you just feel like you need someone to kind of let you know, if there's certain things that you can rearrange, you can always come with us to do those. Hopefully we have one scheduled soon. But Eric, if you can post the link to the website, if we do have one that's scheduled soon, it'll be listed on there. So feel free to bring as many poems as you have, and let us hear them, and we'll definitely help you with that. And then for Mary, so yeah, the third group, that's just for my particular poem. You can make as many groups as you like. It's just the way in which you're going to organize your thoughts so that you can tell this story of your perspective to this other person, place, or thing. So I'm going with 3 just because it kind of makes sense. I know for mine, it was kind of like the resolution. So it's like I'm in the first group acknowledging what the wrong was. In the second group, I'm gonna talk about, how much I do love and care for her and how much I do see all that she does for me. And then the third, I wanna sort of make that promise in the future that I'm gonna start, showing her that I acknowledge her, or show her that I appreciate her and that I see the things that she's done for me. So yeah, let me know if that makes sense at all. All right. And so, yeah, actually, like I was saying with Shatha, from there, once you kind of get these ideas into groups, you can just kind of, start writing it out verbatim. So I'm actually going to use a new. This is I'll just use the one right next to it. And so you can just write it out in the group verbatim as you have it listed, just to kind of get an idea of what information that you have on the page. Show you what I'm saying in just a second. Wish I wrote a little faster. And as you'll see, the language might be a little bit plain, but as it's like first coming out of your brain, it might not be super flowery or quote unquote poetic, which as it if it's in a poem, it's poetic, but you might want to dress it up just a little bit, and that's everyone's individual style. If they want to dress it up and make it more flowery, they can. If not, that's perfectly fine. But so I just kept mine pretty simple. So this is how I wrote it out. I don't know if you guys can see that. Yeah, it's just like 2 or 3 lines per stanza. And so this is a good starting point for where I'd like to take this poem. But if you do want to dress up your poem, something that's, you don't have to do this again, but this is where you can kind of use things like literary devices. These are things that kind of get you a little bit closer to that like flowery poetic language. They can also help to bring people into your perspective, specifically things like similes and metaphors, just because their purpose is to compare to things that this person may already be familiar with. And so it helps them to understand where you're coming from a bit better. Of course, Shatha. And so I have some examples just to kind of give you all some starting points to think about when it comes to literary devices. So something like a simile, if your poem is about, you're feeling confusion, like you just don't understand, where this other person is coming from, you can say like, it's like there's a thunderstorm in my brain, because they're gonna understand like, oh, clouds, lightning, like there's just a lot of chaos going on. And so they may better understand where you're coming from there. If you're going for something like a metaphor, you can say, if your poem's about, this person is really irritating, which is perfectly okay to have a poem like that. That's, I have a couple poems like that. You could say, you're a thorn, pricking into my fingers whenever I try to prune my garden, prune my roses. Which is pretty direct. It kind of gets to the point like, oh, I'm like really pricking them. Like I'm causing them a lot of undue irritation. I should probably stop doing that. Things like idioms are just kind of common phrases. If you've heard the phrase like, every cloud has a silver lining, or, I don't think absence makes the heart grow fonder. I don't know if that's necessarily one, but that might be one. Which you don't have to follow these specific rules, so you can kind of mix and match a lot of these different things. A lot of the literary devices that I use typically are in the realm of like personification, and that's where you give inanimate objects human qualities. So, saying like, talking about like, I guess that's technically a metaphor. But saying like, you know, the wind blowing through like the trees, or yeah, like the wind blowing through the trees, you know, is the kind of relief that you give me when I'm around you. That's something I came up with on the top of my head. I don't know if it makes sense, but you can use a lot of these and kind of going back over the things that you wrote in your initial groups, and just try to see, you know, play around with it. See if, you know, if you replace one of your senses with one of these literary devices. See if it makes your poem make more sense, or if it feels more powerful. Like it's really gonna get this person, you know, place or thing to really understand where you're coming from. And yeah, keep working on it. So yeah, we've actually come to the end of our workshop, but again, this is something that we want you to keep working on if you would like. I know for me, I use poems as a form of catharsis. It's typically when, you know, something comes into my head and I just like, I don't know how I feel about this, but I want to get it out of my head and get it, you know, on a tablet, piece of paper, you know, whatever is nearby. And afterwards, I just feel amazing. This is obviously a different feeling for every poet. Like it might help them to think about what they're feeling a little bit more. You may not feel, you know, particularly great afterwards, but it could be a step that, you know, you want to try just to see if it may help. So yeah, if it feels good, just keep going with it. Keep trying to workshop this poem. And again, if you need some help with it, just, you know, let us know over here at C4C, and we'll try to help you out with that.